Welcome back to another episode of Ruthless TV, where I break down your favorite drama series scene by scene. Now, let's get into this video. Today, I'll be recapping The Chi, Season 2, Episode 4. The show opens with Keisha, Kevin, and Nina. And Nina is encouraging Keisha to eat healthy, even though she may not want to, because she needs a healthy meal. She's lately just been grabbing, hot Cheetos and anything that she can to satisfy her cravings. But her mom is just basically encouraging her to, just have a decent meal sometimes. And then on to Kevin. She actually gave him this life book, or not a life book, but like a life guide or this pamphlet or something. And she was showing him that he needs to get on the right path. And she was basically letting him know that if you do certain things at certain points in your life, that it kind of dictates the rest of your life. And Kevin really didn't want to hear it. He was like, well, what about Oprah, Allen Iverson, and Barack Obama? He was like, they all messed up and nobody knows how their life is going to be 20 years from now. So he said he's just going to, do the best that he can. Then we move on to Jake and Shad. And Shad is telling him, just giving him women advice and, on why Jake got suspended. And listen, he is the very last person that you need to listen to about advice on anything. He's a bad card. He's just trouble up and down, left and right. There's no other way to cut it. I would stay as far away from this dude as I could. But anyway, he's sitting here giving life advice to Jake. Then Trig, he overhears them and he comes in and tells Jake to go to his room. Then they get into this little tiff, this back and forth about whose house it is, because I think that this used to be their brother's house, the one that got shot and killed. Then here comes Shad again, talking about, why he's walking around the house acting like Uncle Phil. But then Trig tells him to clean up or something, and then Rashad gives him this look like, yeah, okay, I got you. He's just trouble, period. Then we cut to Emmett and Tiffany, and Tiffany enters the apartment, and then of course Emmett wants to know where she's been all night. And she tells him, I was with one of my customers, and he wants to know if the customer was male or female, and of course she said male. And Emmett, he wants to know exactly who it is and all the details, right? He's asking her all the right questions, and she didn't beat around the bush. She didn't stutter, and she just basically told him that she slept with Dante. And not only did she tell him that she slept with Dante, but she said that Dante gives better head than him. Drops mic. I'm done. The look on Emmett's face, priceless. Then we move on to Duda and Tracy, and he's dangling this $5 million in front of Tracy's face, to see what she would do with it, because he's saying instead of giving the money to fund the police, he's going to give it to her to run her organization. And of course, $5 million is a lot of money, and she doesn't really quite know what she's going to do with it. But then here comes Trig. He comes in, rudely interrupting the meeting, and he sits down and turns on the news because apparently Duda has not been paying attention. And they were interviewing, I guess that would be the chief of police, and he was basically saying, okay, now that we're defunded, let's see what the city's going to do without us. But Trig lets him know that, that the old school heads and the aunties won't be happy about, defunding the police. And Duda reminded him that he's the one who's basically tired of being policed by the police. Then Duda starts to put Trig out of the office, and then Tracy stops him to ask him to help her to spend the $5 million. And she tells him that she wants to have an organized plan to put back into the community. Now, that's a smart woman. Then we cut back to Tiffany and Emmett is knocking on the door, asking Tiffany if, to open it. And he wants to know if Dante pulled out while they were having sex, so that if she ends up pregnant, they'll know who the baby's father is. Then Tiffany came out of the bathroom and she said that we both, got excited a lot. So it's hard to tell if he pulled out or not. So at this point, Emmett needs to take the L and just go sit down. So then we move on to Jada, and she's at her doctor's appointment. Last episode, we found out that she's been diagnosed with breast cancer, and Dre, her friend, is there, and she's asking the doctor about natural alternatives, and he doesn't know enough information about natural alternatives, to make a recommendation. He tells them that the cancer is more aggressive than they thought, and he wants to begin the treatments as soon as this week. Then Jada thanks Dre for not telling Nina. And at some point she said that she's going to have to tell Nina, and you're going to have to tell Emmett. She's going to have to tell everybody. But she's saying that she doesn't really want Nina to know yet, because Nina's going to talk to her daughter, Keisha, and then Keisha's going to talk to Emmett, her son, who will then know that she has cancer. She's just not ready to reveal all that information yet. But then Dre tells her that she doesn't have to go through this alone. She's a great friend, right? I really think that their friendship is going to be questioned at some point, because later in the episode, she's on the phone talking to her quietly in another room, because if you're looking at it with, a blind eye, you would think, you're hiding something. You're talking to someone that you don't want me to hear you talking to. And it just looks very, very suspicious, right? So I think that their relationship or their friendship will be questioned later on. Then we cut to Emmett, and he's at the restaurant, Smokey's. He's in there early prepping food because I guess he can't sleep. He's got a lot on his mind. So he was like, I might as well just put this extra energy that I have into prepping the food. Then Dom comes in and she wants to know why he's there so early. He let her know that he had to tell Tiffany what was going on. He said that he couldn't live with the guilt anymore, and that he just had to tell her. Then Dom wants to know why he told her, and she's concerned about their friendship and especially the edibles tasting that's going to be happening on tomorrow. And she's, like, it's going to be all weird now because you told her. And she's talking about, she's a good friend. I really liked our friendship, and now it's going to be weird. And girl, if you didn't want it to be weird, don't smash her husband, period. Then Emmett tells her that Tiffany will be, too busy with Dante, and she won't have time to be mad, and she won't be focusing on that. In the meantime, Papa is in the dining area with his Crayola markers, making a black-owned business sign just in case, riots begin and get out of control from the protesters. So he's making his sign to make sure that, that they know that this is a black-owned business, not to touch it, because he doesn't want to be out of a job. Then we see Rose and Duda coming up the stairs to what looks like City Hall. And Rose is worried that Duda's plan will do more harm than good. And just another side note here, it's really refreshing to see Kandi in a scripted series. I didn't even know that she was on this show, so I'm so happy to see her. And she's carrying a name of a character that I created a long time ago on another stage play that I wrote. So I'm really excited to see her as Rose. But they run into Marcus upstairs, and then they kind of carry on a small conversation about the Olympics and Duda's plans and stuff like that. But they're going to continue this conversation in another scene. Now we enter the salon, and we see Amani there with a client, and then in walks Nook with a young girl, and he says 3 words to her: do her hair. Amani puts the curlers down and walks over to the young girl and asks her how she liked to get her hairstyle. And the young girl looked really forced and sad and disheveled. She looked lost, all of that. And in the meantime, Nook is over there lighting a cigarette, and then Amani tells him, please don't smoke in here, don't do that. And he threw the cigarette on the floor. Just really rude. This guy's more bad news, right? I would not be putting up with him either. Then we move on to ISS, where we see the teacher and Jake and Kevin. And this history teacher, or I don't know if he's a history teacher, but he seems to know all about the Black history and the oppression and all of this stuff. And he tells him that they basically have a righteous anger, and, he's going to set them free and all this old craziness. I don't like his character, but anyway, he wants them to express on paper what it's like to be Black, or, how they feel about being oppressed and all this mess. And then, of course, Jake chimes in and says, it sounds like a lot of BS to me, right? And I agree. And Kevin wants him to comply so that they can just do whatever they have to do to get out of ISS. Then we cut back to the basement salon. The young lady hadn't washed her hair in a while. Then we see Shad coming into the salon, and he's, greeting old Smokey the Bandit there. And then Nook is surprised to see him because he didn't know that he had gotten out of jail. But anyway, Shad is free from working, so he's going to go and grab some lunch. And Nook says that he's going to join him. Then we see the young lady at the shampoo bowl looking very uncomfortable. She has a look of terror across her face, to be honest. Then Amani asks her if she's good, and the young lady tells her no. And, there is some type of connection that she has with these young girls. And I'm thinking that somewhere in her past that she has experienced the same things that they're going through. Because remember when they went to Nuck's house when they were looking for Keisha, and she started punching this guy, who was with this girl in a room. And, so she's being triggered, somewhere, about these incidents with these young girls. So I'm just waiting to see what really happened to her in her past to, trigger her in that way. Then we cut to Kevin and Gemma. They're walking down the hallway and she's reading the paper that Kevin wrote to get himself out of ISS. And Gemma thinks that the paper is pretty good. And she wants to interview Kevin for her morning announcement show. But Kevin quickly tells her that he has to go. And I really don't like the way he's chumping her off. She seems to be like a really sweet girl, just really caring about him and looking out for him. But he just keeps giving her the cold shoulder, and I don't understand why. Why is he so mean to her? Then she sees Jake strolling down the hall after he did not write his paper, but she wants to interview him for her show anyway, because she says that she's tired of interviewing the white people that don't know anything. Then we catch up with Nuck and Shad at their lunch date at the bar, when Nuck tells him that he'd rather be dead than to work with that thing in there. Then Shad unknowingly jumps to Amani's defense and says that she's not really that bad. I mean, she's a little bossy, but she's okay. Then Nuck tells him that Amani is not a girl, but a dude in a dress. And it looks like this news came as a complete shock to Shad. I don't think he knew. I mean, he couldn't have known, right? Then we move on and we see Jada pouring herself a shot of the brown when Emmett comes in with his woes about he and Tiffany. And she's a bit indecent. She doesn't have on a lot of clothes. And then she throws on her robe. And of course, her mind is focused on her own situation. Then Emmett kind of sees her lounging around in her night clothes. And then Emmett asks her if she's depressed. Then Sway comes running out of the room naked. Then Emmett begins to threaten him. And Jada tells him to go back into the room. Then Jada tells Emmett that she needs to talk to him. And I think this may have been a time where she wanted to just tell him what was going on. But he was so upset and his feelings about Sway coming out naked, he just left. And, she didn't get a chance to talk to him about anything. Then we'll move on to Trig and Tracy again. They're talking to TD Jakes Jr. at the church about the Community Protection Center, and they want the community to call them instead of calling 911. So Trig wants to prove to the police that they really don't need them. He feels that they have enough skills and talent right there in the community amongst themselves to handle any situation without involving the law enforcement. And he brought along some forms for them to fill out so that they are all aware of everybody's talents, education, and skills that they have to contribute. Then Tracy answers the community protection hotline, and her and Trig have to leave to handle the call. Then we cut back to Amani and her shop, and she's standing there talking to her friends and letting them know that the young lady is really crying out for help. And then one of the friends tells Amani that it's not their problem and to stay out of grown folks' business, and they tell her to get Trig to handle it. I cannot believe I'm hearing this, but yeah, that's what this is. So Tracy and Trig get to their first 911 call, and it's a domestic dispute where a young man is arguing with his young lady over her OnlyFans activities. But she says that the money is paying their rent and that he needs to basically get a job to contribute. Then out in the hallway, a fight ensues. The guy punches Trig in his face. But Big Mike was there to calm all that heat down rather quickly. Then the young lady is over there talking to Tracy, but it's not too successful because she doesn't really feel comfortable talking to her because she doesn't know her. Then we cut to Emmett and Keisha sitting at the restaurant when Tiffany drops by to drop off their son. And Emmett tells Keisha that he's finally fessed up and told Tiffany about he and Dom. And Emmett is feeling away because Tiffany is sleeping with her customers and his mom is sleeping with the masseuse. So he may be a bit backed up and flustered. And Keisha warned him to be careful because the fact that Keisha is being silent and not really saying too much to him is not a good sign. Then we see Tracy sitting with the young lady that called 911, and she's offering, well, it wasn't 911, it's whatever their hotline number is. But anyway, she's offering her support and told her that whether she decides to stay or leave, that she could offer some resources. And Trig is still outside with her hothead boyfriend, advising him to go and stay with a relative for the night, but he says he wants to stay home. And in this moment, Trig is talking to him like he's a big brother. And he's telling him, look, man, I could be at home, handling my own business, but instead I'm here talking to you, making sure that you're good. Then Tracy brings his duffel bag and they give it to him. And I guess they were upstairs packing all this time. Then they give it to him and he leaves out. And then Tracy asks Trig, is this what he really wants to do? And she wants him to be sure. And he said, that they have to start somewhere. Then Trig finally makes it home, and then he's all battered and bruised, but Imani cleans him up a little bit, and she tells him about the girl that came into the salon with Nook. And Trig basically tells her that it's not his problem and that the young girl knew what she was getting into when she got into it. And then Imani gets upset and she tells him to sleep on the couch, and that's pretty much the end of this scene. Then we move on to Gemma and Jake, and apparently Jake has agreed to do the interview, and it looks like he's cleaned up a bit, and even threw on some cologne. And Gemma goes on to ask him why the police saw him as a threat when he was actually unarmed. And she's making reference to the police brutality that he suffered, I guess, in the last episode. And Jake tells her that the police see all black men as a threat and that they think that black men don't care if they live or die. And then Jake continues to tell her that he wants to live and that he wants to do something with his life. Then we cut to Marcus, Duda, and Rose, and they're discussing the Olympics and the potential of having the games held right there in Chicago. And Rose remembers that the last time that the deal was on the table, that it only received 4 votes, but this time they want to be taken seriously. Then in walks Tracy, and Rose warns her that they're in a meeting, but she goes on to drop off her reports anyway. Then Duda is asking Tracy about her opinion on the Olympics, and Tracy feels that the black people don't really care about Olympics and that the children in the city actually needs protection because they have people dying out there. And Marcus goes on to say that the games would actually employ a lot of people and that they were prepared to give money to people that had to relocate. We move on to the edibles tasting event that they're holding. We see Tiffany entering the event, and then she walks over to Dom, and then Dom wants to know if they're good, and Tiffany says yes, just don't sleep with him again. And I actually thought this interaction was going to be a little bit more involved than this. I mean, it's as if I don't know if she's forgiven Tiffany, but it looks like they're good. And she said, just don't sleep with him again. I don't know. I would have said way more than that. And I guess Tiffany feels that her anger should be focused more on Emmett instead of Dom because she's not in a relationship with Dom. And I think that maybe Emmett should have told her that it was before they were married. Even though it was wrong, it doesn't really make it right, but they weren't married at the time, and I'm not sure if Tiffany knows that. Then Tiffany's talking to 2 of her friends, and she lets them know what is happening with her and Emmett in the marriage. And they actually encourage her to have an open marriage because at least this way she'll know who the person is. Then she walks over to Jada and Sway, and she tells Jada to have a good time and enjoy herself. Then we cut back to the community center where Tracy's having a meeting with the volunteers, and she's thanking them for their hard work. And then Duda walks in and says that as long as they keep things quiet, then the police won't have to be rehired. And this would be proof that his plan is working. He then steps up to the platform where Tracy is, and he tells her that he's gonna, catch a cab, go home, and have a nightcap and call it a night. And then Tracy asks him, "Can I join you?" Okay. Sway is walking Jada home, and then Emmett comes running out and offers to take her home himself. And she says, go back in, enjoy the party. I'm good. Sway's got my back. Don't worry about it. Then we cut back to Darnell, who is super high off these edibles. Earlier, he was eating so many of them. And, Dom tried to warn him, but, he's big and bad. And, I've been eating these edibles and since you were born and da-da-da-da-da. And now he's seeing double. He's standing on the couch high, chalking. He's crazy right now. But anyway, he just wants to calm down. And this is the type of activity that happens when you eat too many edibles. Then we see poor Kevin here fiending over Gemma after he sees Jake being interviewed on her show. And see, he should have did all of this before he, blessed her out with, giving her the cold shoulder. Don't ignore your woman, because guess what? Somebody else is going to be paying attention to her, and vice versa. Don't ignore your man because somebody else is going to be paying attention to him. Always think forward, think about what could be happening, but if he would have given her this attention in the first place, she wouldn't have had to interview Jake, right? Then we see Nina dressing the table with her famous lasagna, and everyone arrives at the table and they begin to pray. It's a very short scene here, but this is scene by scene, so I'm giving it all to you, right? But anyway, Tiffany's cleaning up after the edibles tasting, and she tells Emmett that she wants to have an open marriage because they've been dating each other since high school, and that she thinks that they're kind of bored with each other. And then Emmett is kind of confused, so he's thinking, okay, so you're going to let me see other people? And she was like, well, yeah, and I'm going to be seeing other people too. So I don't know where the confusion was, but I guess men think that, when a woman says open marriage, that he can do whatever he wants to do. And that is true. But on the other hand, she's going to be doing the exact same thing. Then even in his confusion, he said, okay, if this is what you want, then okay. And I'm sure that this is a whole nother can of worms. This is opening a whole new venture for the both of them. And then they're married, so they don't even know what to expect from this. They're newbies for sure. And you can't, it's not good. They're already on bad terms, so this is just making a bad situation worse. Then we move on to Duda and Tracy standing in the window having their nightcap. They both profess that they like each other, and they begin to do their thing as Rose walks in. Then Rose says that her invitation must have gotten lost in the mail and tells them not to stop on her account. And she says that she likes to watch, so they did just that and kept going. Then we see Rose on the couch enjoying the view. And this concludes this episode of The Chi, Season 2, Episode 4. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up. If you dislike the video, give it a thumbs down, but tell me why you don't like it. All right, thank you so much for joining me, you guys. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, go ahead and do so that you won't miss any recaps of your favorite drama series. And I'll see you on the next one.